You ever get that feeling like something's off, but you can't quite explain it? Maybe it's the way someone looks at you, or how their words sound kind but leave you feeling small. You trust your gut, right? You think you'd know if someone around you was toxic. But what if the most dangerous people, the ones who drain you, twist your emotions and make you question your worth, don't look dangerous at all? What if they smile, offer help, make you feel special, and all the while, they're slowly unraveling you from the inside? The truth is, real psychological danger doesn't scream. It whispers, it charms, it hides behind love, friendship, even family. And most of the time, these people don't even know they're doing it. They're just projecting the parts of themselves they've buried, the pain, the shame, the chaos. And if you're not careful, you'll start carrying what was never yours to hold. Carl Jung saw this clearly. He knew the unconscious has a way of slipping into our relationships. He warned us about 6 types of people, silent, subtle, and soul-shifting, that we all need to watch for. And by the end, there's one moment that could wake you up for good. All right, let's begin. They don't set out to hurt you. There's no plan, no malice, no grand scheme. But somehow, you always leave the conversation feeling smaller, drained, off balance, like you've done something wrong, though you're not sure what. At first, you think you're just being sensitive. You tell yourself they're going through something. You try harder to be supportive, more understanding, more available. But underneath it all, something isn't right. This isn't just emotional weight, it's something deeper. This is what Carl Jung called projection. When we do not confront what lives within us, he said, we will encounter it as fate. And often, that fate looks like someone who makes their wounds your responsibility. They don't see you clearly. They see a version of themselves they can't face, and they hand it to you. Suddenly, you're not a person anymore. You're a role, a target, a savior, a scapegoat. You become whatever their unconscious needs you to be. And the most haunting part? You slowly start to believe it. You shrink to fit the space they've made for you. You edit your tone, your words, your presence, just to keep the peace. But there is no peace, because the battlefield was never yours. This is not love. This is not empathy. This is psychological possession, silent, unseen, and deeply human. And still they don't know they're doing it. Because the unconscious doesn't knock. It enters through the cracks of unhealed pain and takes the wheel without ever asking. The only way out is to see, to name it, to recognize when someone's sorrow is spilling into you, and to stop holding what was never yours to carry. Only then do you return to yourself, and that, quietly, softly, is the beginning of awakening. And then there's a different kind of danger. Not loud, not chaotic, but quiet, composed, almost flawless. They don't drain you with blame. They don't project their wounds onto you. Instead, they invite you into a world of polished surfaces, a world that feels safe at first. They say all the right things, they know how to behave, they smile on cue, they comfort with ease, and everyone admires them for it. But what you're witnessing isn't them. It's a persona, a carefully constructed mask built to meet expectations, to fit in, to be accepted. Carl Jung warned us, the persona is what someone is not, but what they and others think they are. It's not fake in the way we usually think of fakeness. It's deeper than that. It's when someone becomes so identified with their mask, they forget who they were without it. Their truth locked away, their messiness exiled, their soul starved beneath the surface. And if you stay close to someone like this, you'll feel it. Not immediately, but over time, a kind of emotional hunger sets in. Conversations feel rehearsed, laughter feels slightly off. You sense there's something just beneath the surface, but it never quite comes out. And slowly, without realizing it, you start to adapt. You edit yourself, you silence your own instincts. You try to match their perfection, because their image becomes the standard, and anything raw, real, or vulnerable feels wrong. But the price of the persona is high, and often it's paid by those closest to them, because when authenticity dies in one person, it begins to die in the space between you. Jung saw this as one of the greatest obstacles to individuation, the journey of becoming whole. And the tragedy is, they don't know they've lost themselves, and you don't realize you're losing you, until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize the reflection staring back. This isn't just a mask, it's a forgetting, and the first step toward remembering is to stop playing along. And then, there's the one who never raises their voice, never says too much, never seems out of control. They are composed, considerate, predictable in all the ways that feel safe. But beneath that calm isn't peace. It's pressure. Silence held too long, emotion pushed too deep. This is the person who has made an enemy of their own inner world, burying anything messy, dark, or inconvenient into the basement of the psyche, then locking the door and smiling politely. Carl Jung called this buried realm the shadow, the part of ourselves we deny, reject, or disown. But that never stops living. He said, the shadow is everything we refuse to recognize in ourselves, yet it still finds a way to live. And the longer it's hidden, the more dangerous it becomes. Their kindness starts to feel conditional, their patience tight-lipped, their stability too perfect. You sense it, not in what they say, but in what they don't. Resentment disguised as reason. Bitterness woven into gestures too smooth. A quiet rigidity that makes you second-guess your own emotions. And then one day, it snaps. Not over something big. Maybe a comment, a question, a small human imperfection. And suddenly, the volcano erupts. Not because you crossed a line, but because you triggered something they've spent years trying not to feel. Living with this person feels like walking through a house made of glass. Everything looks clear, but every step risks a fracture. Their shadow doesn't just haunt them, it shapes you. It makes you hide, adjust, suppress, just to awaken what they've tried to forget. And still, they may have no idea. Because they've lived so long in self-control, they've mistaken repression for strength. But strength without integration becomes a weapon, turned inward or eventually turned outward. Jung warned us, the stronger the persona, the more repressed the shadow. And the more repressed the shadow, the more brutal its return. And so, you learn. Real danger is not always in volatility. Sometimes, it's in the silence, in the things never said, in the darkness denied for so long it no longer asks permission to surface. To live close to the keeper of the repressed shadow is to lose your right to emotional honesty. But to see this pattern, to name it, is to begin the quiet work of reclaiming your own truth. And that is how the healing begins. After the silence of the repressed comes the voice of virtue. Clear, certain, unyielding. They don't shout, they instruct. They don't attack, they advise. But what you're receiving doesn't feel like guidance. It feels like judgment with better packaging. This is the moral controller, the one who wraps their own unresolved shadow in righteousness and rules and calls it concern. It's for your own good. You'll thank me later. Someone needs to say it. But what they're really saying is, I can't face this in myself, so I need to control it in you. Carl Jung warned that the shadow isn't always loud or violent. Sometimes it's dressed in ideals, in dogma, in a need to appear good at all costs. Because underneath the polished image of integrity is something deeply fragile, a fear of their own impulses, contradictions, or long-buried desires. So they repress them, and what gets repressed doesn't disappear. It just finds a new home in you. They project what they fear inward onto your freedom, your curiosity, your aliveness. And slowly, you shrink. You stop speaking freely. You second-guess your joy. You edit your choices to avoid the subtle punishments, the disapproving glance, the cold silence, the helpful correction. What once felt like connection now feels like surveillance. And the worst part, you start to believe it. You begin to police yourself, not because you've done wrong, but because you've absorbed their fear as your own. This is how control disguises itself as care. This is how someone else's unresolved moral struggle becomes your inner critic. Jung saw this clearly. He knew that excessive moralism is not a sign of virtue, but a symptom of fragmentation. Where there is constant judgment, there is unacknowledged shadow. And if you stay too long in this dynamic, you don't just feel wrong, you feel broken. But you are not. The truth is, the moral controller isn't trying to lead you. They're trying to avoid themselves. And the more you conform to their version of right, the further you drift from your own soul. The first act of healing is this: to return to your own moral compass and gently, quietly step out of the cage they mistook for love. After morality fails to control the chaos returns. But now it wears no disguise. It comes raw, unpredictable, shifting without warning. This is the one you can never quite read. Loving in the morning, cold by night, open, then withdrawn, grateful, then suddenly accusing. You never know who you'll be speaking to, the one who sees you or the one who can't. Jung called this pattern complexes, psychic fragments born from unhealed wounds. Emotional knots that live in the unconscious, waiting for the smallest moment to unravel. To the complex person, the present is never really present. It's a stage, haunted by the echoes of abandonment, shame, betrayal. And you become the placeholder for their past. They don't react to you, they react to what you awaken. A gesture reminds them of a parent who left. A tone echoes an old rejection. A silence becomes proof of abandonment, even when it's filled with care. And you start to bend. You apologize for things you didn't do. You censor your truth to avoid setting off another storm. You soften, you shrink, you walk on eggshells, not because you're wrong, but because you're trying to protect someone from the ghosts they haven't yet faced. But here's what Jung understood. The more we protect others from their own unconscious, the more we lose ourselves in the process. You become the peacekeeper, the emotional translator, the human buffer for pain that was never yours. And yet, they might still say you're the problem. Because in the world of the complex, every relationship is a reenactment, a stage where old pain seeks a new audience. It's not their fault. They don't even see it happening, but it's not yours to carry either. Because no amount of tiptoeing can heal a wound that was never handed to you. And the longer you stay, the more you lose track of what's real, what's yours, what's theirs, what's now, and what's just a replay of something you never lived, but are now forced to feel. The only way out is awareness, to recognize when love becomes a cycle, when empathy becomes survival, and when someone's past begins to rewrite your present. Jung didn't say we should abandon the complex, but he did say this: we must not become a host to what they refuse to heal. And that is an act of love, both for them and for yourself. Some people don't take your love, they take your life force. They don't demand loudly, they don't manipulate with rage, they simply need, endlessly, quietly, constantly. At first, you don't even notice it. You think you're just being kind. You answer the late messages. You stay on the call. You offer presence, reassurance, patience. But over time, you begin to feel a weight, a strange kind of heaviness you can't explain. You're not in danger. You're just tired, in your body, in your mind, in your spirit. This is the psychic vampire, not in myth, not in fiction, but in Jungian reality, a symbol of the unresolved symbiotic bond. A relationship where two people stop being separate souls and start becoming one emotional system. Except, it's not mutual. They don't want to stand on their own. They don't want to look inward. They don't want to grow. They want to merge with you, so they can avoid the unbearable emptiness within themselves. And they will take anything you offer, time, attention, affection, not out of malice, but because the hunger never ends. You give, then give more. And what they return is more need. You start to feel selfish for setting boundaries, cold for needing space, wrong for wanting a moment to yourself, because they've woven their survival into your presence. And the more they lean on you, the more invisible you become. This is the trap Jung warned of, where the boundaries blur so deeply, you no longer know where you end and they begin. It's not love, it's not connection, it's a quiet erosion. And here's the truth no one wants to say. You cannot fill what someone else refuses to face. You cannot carry what they keep avoiding. And the more you try, the more your soul begins to empty, drop by drop, moment by moment, until you're not sure who you are anymore. Only that you're tired. The psychic vampire isn't cruel, but they are consuming. And until they learn to stand in their own shadow, they will keep reaching for yours. So the most loving thing you can do is not to give more, but to return to yourself, to reclaim your center, to remember you are not responsible for anyone else's emptiness. That is their work, not your offering. And healing begins when you let it go. So now you've seen them. Not just the 6 faces of danger, but 6 reflections of the unconscious in motion. And perhaps somewhere in that mirror you saw a flicker of yourself. That's not failure. That's awakening. Because healing doesn't begin with perfection. It begins with honesty. With the courage to admit, I've projected, I've performed, I've avoided my shadow and worn masks to survive, but I'm ready to see. Jung never told us to reject these parts, only to recognize them, to bring light to the places we abandoned, and stop expecting others to carry what only we can integrate. So here's the invitation. Step back into your own center. Cut the invisible threads that bind you to someone else's story, and return to the one place you forgot to look, within. Because the more you see your unconscious, the less it controls you. And that, quietly, gently, is the beginning of real freedom. If this spoke to something deep within you, don't keep it to yourself. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your feedback matters. It helps me create better videos that speak more directly to what you feel and need. See you in the next one.